All right. Here we are, February 2nd. February 16th. That's 2/16/24. Common Sense, Ohio, coming at you here from Studio C at Channel 511 Studios. Lots of people do podcasts down here, but ours happens to be the best, I think. Norm's got his Constitution portrayed. Is that the right word? Displayed, maybe is the better thing. Displayed right there on the round table. The reason the table is round is because we like to have a discussion without corners. We don't cut corners. There are none to cut. Anyway, it's commonsenseohioshow.com if you want to check us out online, if you want to get a catalog of all the back episodes, if you want to check out Norm's blogs, if you want to find an easy way to subscribe to podcasts. Still surprising to me. Actually, maybe not surprising. Many folks don't know how to get a podcast. They still sort of search on YouTube or wherever, and there is a way to do it, and we can simplify it for you. Go to commonsenseohioshow.com, click subscribe. It'll take you right where you need to be. You can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, all the video platforms where we are. See what I did there? I sort of begged the question, logical fallacy, but at least I recognized it.
And a round table has an infinite number of corners.
I suppose it does if you get down to molecular levels. Yeah.
Yes.
But we're not going to do that.
Oh, man.
So we will get right at it. Our World War II fact of the day. Norm, there was a lot of stuff. We talked about the Pacific last week. There's some stuff going on this week on February 16th, I believe, 1945. The Battle of Corregidor, a little tiny island outside the Manila Bay. I think we had our Marines or the paratroopers landed on Corregidor. At the same time, we started bombarding Iwo Jima. So the Pacific War was on. The Japanese were digged in, entrenched into the islands.
It's more military.
Yeah. They were entrenched into the islands. But yeah, as we were sort of island hopping all the way to Japan, we took these islands. And it's interesting. I looked at the map, and, you hear Manila Bay and you think like beaches and suntan lotion and
Not so much, really.
And stuff like that. But, it's like, and then you got Ali, the thriller in Manila. But, it was a huge strategic gain. And when we had to leave that, I think Corregidor was the last island we left when we left the Philippines.
That's right.
And I think it was among the first we took back. So anyway, that's what was going on in 1945 on February 16th. Last week we had Glenn Harper from Harper Plus Accounting, our dear sponsor at the roundtable. So if those of you who have any idea or want to know who he is, and you didn't catch last week's episode, you should do it. He provided a little bit of tax insight, but more important, he provided some commentary. He jumped right in and contributed to the common sense thought process right along with us. So Harper Plus Accounting does my books this time of year, and I'm gearing up for my federal return or my corporate returns on, man, I just can't get anything right today. My corporate returns on March 15, personal returns April 15. And guess what? I ain't extending nothing because I got Harper Plus Accounting on my side, and we're going to get it done on time.
Well, I was listening closely to Glenn, and he said, actually, our personals this year are due on April the 18th.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Because of the holiday, probably.
Is that how it
or
falls?
not the holiday, the weekend. So if it's
falls?
due, if it happens to fall on a weekend or a holiday or whatever, so April 18th.
Didn't even look that far in advance. Did it?
So,
yep.
An extra 3 days.
And I know April 15th is a Monday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is.
So,
Interesting.
I
don't know why, man.
I don't know. Why would the federal government confuse us with something like an April 18 instead of a 15 deadline where it's been since like the dawn of time?
I don't know. They don't even defend our borders anymore, so go figure the federal.
Well, look, I mean, they don't defend the borders, but they're going to be Johnny on the spot. They're going to be the Minutemen when it comes to collecting taxes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So speaking of the borders, lots going on down there, Norm. I know you got your laundry list over there, so we might as well hit it.
Yeah, so we had a border bill or deal that the Senate had negotiated with the White House, and it failed. The House of Representatives is not going to pass this deal. And what it was, the main fault of the bill is the deal was that Biden would shut down the border once the daily number of incursions by illegals was 5,000 or more, okay, for a sustained, I think it was 5 days in a row, had to be 5,000, something like that in the deal. So Uncle Norm got out his calculator, and I sat down And I figured out that if the illegals came over at a rate of 4,999, in other words, one less than the tripwire, right, that was set in this deal, what would that equal times 365 days? The answer is 1.8 million would be consecrated by this deal.
So unfettered. And the other thing about the deal is
it's insane.
It added nothing. In fact, it might have even watered down some of the like catch and release and enforcement provisions. I mean, the bill did nothing. And it's such classic political jostling.
Exactly.
To promote a bill like this that is completely unnecessary to shut down the border, by the way, because look, every other president has been able to do it without such a bill.
Exactly right. It's gaslighting at a high level for Biden to claim that he needs legislation in order to do what he's already authorized and empowered.
Like one of the few things that he should have authority to do, and you know he didn't need a bill to forgive student loans.
Right.
For instance.
Even though Obama said, I do need legislation for him to have done it, but Joe just did.
Doesn't need a bill for gun control, doesn't need a bill. Like the mighty pen is very powerful, except on the border with Mr. Biden.
Right.
Which is
Give me the money.
Right, which is such nonsense. So what it is political jostling. So they set up this bill that is baked with a bunch of Orwellian BS. And when the Republicans don't agree, they get to blame the Republicans as like this was bipartisan. So if they do agree and it doesn't work, well, it's bipartisan.
Right.
If the Republicans don't agree, it's their fault that the border is wide open.
Right.
I mean, it's such crap. And you know what? I fault the Republicans here for not being clear on that message. It's like the Republicans are a scattered mess, especially in the House. And it's been this way for some time now. And, the Republicans need to get their act together and have a message here to say, look, this is BS. It does the facts that you just talked about, Norm. There's about a dozen other that if you dig into it, the enforcement provisions are completely meaningless. Nothing changes a thing. In fact, it might even make it worse because at least it's going to rubber stamp admittance. And it's nothing. And the Republicans are sort of like scatterbrained and pointing the finger at each other on this crap instead of just portraying a message.
The thing that I can't get over is if the president has the power to shut down the border when it hits 5,000 illegals per day under this border deal negotiation, then why not 1,000? Why not 500?
Why not
150?
one?
Why not one?
What is the magic? What is this 5,000 magic number? It's a pull it out of your butt number?
I would think that, yes. It's just nonsense.
Right?
It's nonsense.
Well, it would allow up to 1.8 million illegals per year by statute.
Look, why not just pass a law that says we're going to allow X number of people in the country? Just reverse it.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is, we know that there's going to be illegal people coming in, so we're just going to let it happen up to 5,000. Then we'll stop it. But in 5 days, that'll start over.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's such ridiculousness.
We already have the backlog of people that are in the court system to become legal.
That have notices to appear that are now 6-7 years out.
Yeah, like
which is moronic.
It is
completely moronic.
That is moronic. That we court dates 7 years from now.
And you get the Democrats blaming the Republicans for this, and the Republicans are sitting there and sometimes just sitting there and saying, not fighting back. Say, look, this is crap.
Yeah.
Biden, you could stop this today. He could stop it today. There's plenty of money. There's plenty of funding. There's plenty of manpower to do it. And if there's not, nobody would complain about hiring people if you're going to use them.
Right. We are witnessing a very noxious nexus. I like that, between the Democrats who want unfettered illegal immigration because they have it in their head that illegals are blue voters and they're going to vote for them, and that's their constituency.
Well, maybe that's what they think. Maybe they're true ideologues. Maybe it's something of both. Who knows?
It's definitely that. It's definitely turning Texas from red to blue. And then the other part of the nexus is Republicans who have been bought off by the big chambers of commerce who just want cheap labor, who just want people picking stuff in the fields. And what the Republicans are doing is they are betraying American citizens and, the sanctity of their votes. And what the Democrats are betraying are their union constituency who wants to have a high wage environment, or a reasonably high wage environment. And these illegals are undercutting all of these union jobs.
Yeah.
So both sides are selling out their constituencies.
It's always about three things: money, power, ego.
Yeah.
And at any given time, one thing is more important than the other, or maybe two are there and one isn't, but it's always money, power, or ego. And you've got money and power going on here. People want the power and they want the money. And
when this will be solved will be when enough union leaders go to the Democratic Party and say, hey, listen, it's unsustainable at steel plants and big agricultural plants where we process chickens, eggs, beef, cat, whatever, pork. In all of the heavy industry, we have people coming in that are willing to work for cash for like $3 an hour, versus our men and women in the union who are getting $45, $50 an hour. You got to stop this flow of illegals. And then on the Republican side, suburban voters or just, common sense people have to tell the Republicans, you're going to lose all your red states here, guys. This flood of people, if the figures are right, under Biden, 10 to 12 million illegals have come in thus far.
It is insanity.
That is the population of Ohio. I mean, you're talking about a whole nother state full of people.
Look, there is no other way to define this. It is giving the country away. I've said this before. A country is defined by its borders.
Yeah.
And if you eliminate borders, you undefine the country. It's not like we're letting people in the traditional American way as a melting pot to assimilate, to create a new culture. No, we're letting people in that don't want to assimilate.
No.
They want their own culture.
No.
And that isn't a country.
And those are just the good people.
Right. That's on the best case scenario.
And then
side.
There's the MS-13ers who
then
are
there's
just
the
coming
criminals,
in.
There's the spies from
cartels.
China. There's all. I mean,
Yeah.
And back to your point about numbers, about the $5,000 number. You don't think these cartels will say, okay, we'll just meter them in.
They play both ways, right? And I guess I want to frame it too the way I'm looking at this, and I know you guys are too. Is I don't think we want to become unempathetic of the situation of people trying to get in this country.
Not at all.
They have a tremendous hard life, and that's why they're trying to run away. The good ones we're talking about, the ones that really want to have
there are
get away
people
from
who
oppression.
legitimately want to get away from oppression and a terrible life, and they want to immigrate to the United States. And I think it's our job as the United States, not just a country, but as the United States, as America, to evaluate first our need for more people, right? And that's a country.
Right.
And we don't always need people to come into our country.
No.
And then as a corollary to that, their need to come in. And then we can let people in as we evaluate. And there's standards already to do that. This has been in place forever.
Correct.
And look, there's
one of the standards is to be self-sufficient. I mean, you are not to become a ward of the state. That was one criteria for giving somebody citizenship.
Yeah.
Is that you would be able to support yourself.
Yeah, and thereabouts 1860-ish, 61 through 65, we needed people. Right? So we were letting, I think, was that about the time of the Irish potato famine?
That was the time of the Civil War.
And the Civil War.
We were definitely
needed,
losing people.
And we needed people, right? And look,
Western
so you could
expansion,
say,
the whole, everything going on.
And you could say, well, that's the American tradition. It's like, all right, well, go back and look at the dark side of that. We wanted people to go get killed in the Civil War. So look, or at least fight the Civil War, not necessarily die. But it's like, were you going to say?
No question. A lot of those Irish brigades from New York City, those guys were fresh off the boat.
Like off the boat, here's a rifle, go die.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right.
Right.
Yeah, and they were conscripted.
Yeah, it's not like they had much choice.
There were draft riots in New York City during the Civil War because, people didn't want to go and fight, something that seemed like, okay, so some states want to leave the Union. Okay.
Yeah, they didn't care about any of it. They were fleeing a country that was famished.
They didn't understand it,
and they were just looking for a better life.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Not to get blown up at the Civil War and lose legs.
Big time, man.
But so look, the point I'm making there is that if you're going to point back to say, well, that's not the American tradition, is to close the borders. Like, all right, well, yeah, we open them up and we need people, like Civil War.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's the only reason we let people in, but there's lots of reasons, and that's one of them.
And we don't need this influx for workors.
We do not. We absolutely do not.
That is a
when
gaslighting argument.
When you have unemployment numbers the way it is, with low threes, whatever it is right at this point in time,
we don't need it.
We don't need it.
We've already incentivized our country not to work as it is.
We say here on this program, and I think most times we agree about this, is to let the natural market work. And if there aren't people willing to work for $2.50 or $3 an hour, guess what will happen? Employers will have to pay higher wages.
Not mandated higher wages.
Exactly.
But whatever the market demands.
Whatever
I'm not going to go pick your fields.
That's right.
Or work at McDonald's for $10 an hour.
Right.
Then you work at 10. Let that happen.
Once rates to pick strawberries would get to $15 or $20 an hour, there'll be people taking those jobs.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But at $3 an hour,
when there's a reason for the owners not to hire people at $15 an hour, or if they have an alternative, they won't. Pay $15. They just won't do it.
100%.
And then on the other, like almost as if they're shooting themselves in the mirror. The people, the Dems would say, well, then we need to raise minimum wage. So we force people to pay this much.
Did you see Barbara Lee campaigning for Di-Fi's old Senate seat out in California? Mm-hmm. So current U.S. Congresswoman Barbara Lee proposed a $50
Oh, I did see that. Right.
Minimum wage.
All right, so play that out for a second. Play that out for a second. So this is again Thomas Sowell argument. So if I have to pay, say, a law clerk $50 an hour, I'm not going to hire the brand new, no experience person looking to enter the field.
Honestly,
I'm not going to hire that person. I'm not going to do it.
Might as well hire a lawyer.
I might as well hire a lawyer. I'll get a lot more out of it if I'm going to have to pay that much.
Yeah, and
so my incentive to pay a law clerk is to say, look, I will pay you $10 an hour, and they're going to say, well, that's not enough because I'll say, fine, go work somewhere else, but I'll pay you $10 an hour, and guess what you're going to get? Experience. You're going to learn how to do things, and next year I'll pay you a little bit more, and next year after that I'll pay you a little bit more, and if you pass the bar, maybe I'll bring you on as a full-blown lawyer, and then you can keep moving up the ranks.
Right.
But if you set the bar too high for me to ever have an incentive to hire a law clerk, then nobody ever gets any experience. Now, who does this hurt the most? It hurts the underprivileged and the minorities the most. They don't get the first job at McDonald's because if you're McDonald's, you're not going to hire the young kid who has zero experience for $50 an hour. You might as well hire somebody who's worked.
Right. I talked to a Wendy's franchisee owner, and she told me that she has 25 employees because she can't hire them full time, right? Because of the benefits.
It costs too much.
That's where I was going with my head with the $50 an hour.
That's the next problem.
Because they have made the burden of benefits too heavy. Now, if it goes to $50 an hour, this restaurateur in California was on the tube yesterday saying after he factored $50 an hour and the current cost of supplies and raw materials, that a steak just at an average steakhouse would be $300. Mm-hmm. And he said, you'll put every restaurant in California
out of business.
I mean, they're done.
Right. This is look, I guess I'm not a pure libertarian, but people should go read Atlas Shrugged because this is the so I'm not like Ayn Rand complete. I don't buy it completely, but that's what's going on, right? Eventually they're all going to leave. They have to leave. They're going to have to leave and go somewhere else and create their own version of what works. And it might be Texas. It might be a different state. I mean, if there's anything that's happening right now that's sort of interesting to me, it is this sorting of culture within our country by state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I had a debate upstairs with somebody who was a friend of mine at one point, and she would say, it's just, she was like completely on the other side. We were very dear friends, but she was completely on the other side. And she's like, well, this is just going to result in, we're just going to have to go to our own states. And, the people that think this will go one place in the country, people are going to, I was like, yeah, we used to have that. It was called federalism. You could go, we had the United States of America that could sort of function based on the geography, based on the culture, based on who was there, based on what was necessary. They didn't have this jackboot cramming down on their throats from Washington, D.C., how they should live.
Right.
And, and then we had this Constitution that sort of created maybe bumpers for that.
Yeah, a baseline.
Yeah, you
of what your rights
couldn't do too much either way, but you could live within this and believe what you want, pray to the God you like, and whatever it would be, and the government wouldn't screw with you.
Yeah.
Now it got so everything is so homogenized. They're not happy with you not supporting abortion norm. You have to.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Right.
On any other issue. They want you to believe what they believe.
Right.
And they want to cram that down as national, federal governmental policy. And we have lost our idea, this notion of federalism. And, and if you look at the big parallel, I've used this argument before, you look at the big parallel of what sort of killed the Roman Empire, it's when they tried to force down edicts from above on everybody, it crumbles, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't flex anymore.
And look how puny we've gotten in terms of the federal government's nose in your business, that they tell you what kind of light bulb you're allowed to buy.
What kind of shower heads you can use.
What kind of toilet capacity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's insane.
It's insane.
What kind of car you can drive.
I mean, it's just, we're into crackpot territory.
What you can listen to in your podcast news. I mean, if people think that's not going on, it is.
Well, Jim Jordan, a congressman from Ohio, revealed this week that the White House met with Amazon to get Amazon not to promote and not to sell certain books. So you talk, the D's like to talk about the Republicans being
banning books,
book burners,
Florida book burners,
because they don't want to have a penthouse letters to the editor book in a grade school library. Okay. The Republicans and the mothers out there are not burning books. They're just saying we don't want certain books available to children.
It's important. See, this is again this Orwellian nonsense where they say you're banning books. It's like, no, that's not really what's going on. We are regulating what
is appropriate for children.
Children age school at different levels too. So look, in my high school library, I had different books that were in my K through 5 library.
Absolutely,
my elementary school library.
Yeah, right.
Right. It's not banning books. And I could always go to the bookshelf at any library and get any book.
Right.
Nobody would stop me. I mean, and it's still nobody stopped me. You want to go buy a book on critical race theory or go lease one out from a library? Go do it.
And the books the White House didn't want Amazon to sell.
Yeah, let's hear this list.
This particular meeting, and Jordan says he has more examples, but the one he revealed this week were books, again, about the COVID situation, and they were books by doctors, books by researchers, books by people who used to work for the CDC. Yeah. And these people were writing books about how bad the COVID plague, if you will, was being managed.
Criticizing the government, right?
Oh. Now, what could be more?
What is more relevant to the First Amendment than criticizing the government? Right. This is what the First Amendment was written for.
Exactly right.
I mean, this is like, it couldn't be more offensive to me on any level.
Right.
Any speech criticizing the government is absolutely free speech. It is. I mean, we got rid of all that nonsense,
or just people that want to write about
all that sedition crap. It's like
the medical treatments. Like some of the doctors were publishing books about why the mask mandates didn't make sense from a scientific point of view, why closing down grade schools didn't make sense. There were several books out, but you couldn't buy them on Amazon.
Well, and you couldn't get them elsewhere. So here's another interesting thing back then. When the pandemic first started, there was like a flip-flop going on about masks. And the first message was
even with Fauci,
no masks. And then the second message was masks. And then the third message was no masks. And then masks were mandated, and you should have double, triple masks. And then now they say, well, that was all nonsense. They didn't help anyway.
And disinfecting our fingers, anything you touched.
But right when it first started, I got online and early, like right at the beginning, and I researched masks. In medical journals. I just Googled it.
Yeah.
And I found about half a dozen articles, and there was a study I read that basically said, it was like the New England Journal of Medicine, one of those.
Oh, it was, yes.
And it basically said, look, there is we can't conclude that masks, and it had nothing to do with COVID, by the way. It was like surgical setting.
Right.
They said we can't really conclude that in a hospital wearing a mask does anything, but it makes people feel good, was essentially the message.
Yes.
And it gives people this security that we're so used to wearing, so that's why we do it.
Right. We have to do something.
Well, this is this is a study back from like 2010 or something. Right. And what was interesting is I looked for that study later because I was arguing with somebody about it, and I couldn't find it.
Poof. So, Steve,
I could now, and maybe just I wasn't looking in the same place, but I'm not a good Google researcher. I just Googled medical studies on masks.
I know we're going down a little side trail here, but you are so on target that the World Health Organization's standing practice when it comes to respiratory pandemics was pre-COVID was no masks. And that's what Fauci came out initially and said. He said, look, CDC, WHO says masks don't work for a respiratory pandemic. They're not efficacious.
Yep.
So they both, the WHO and Fauci, the CDC, flipped, as you say, because the idea that it provides that we're doing something.
So you have to wonder why.
Psychologically.
Why did they care? Who was making money? Because it's always money, power, ego, right?
Yeah.
So, is it the power? Was it they just wanted to see if they could force us to wear masks?
Because there's no money in masks because the masks weren't even being made here.
There were some money in masks because the government was giving them away. So
Even
the government was buying. So somebody had a grant somewhere to either import them. But you're right. They weren't being.
There's money being moved around.
You're right. Money's moving somewhere. It's sort of like the shot.
Yeah.
It's like, why did the government care so much you got a shot? And then you look at the deals, because they got huge deals to buy all these freaking doses of this crap.
Right. Companies Fauci was invested in.
And he's and they're investing. Somebody was making, I don't know, Brett, how the money worked. I would only bet.
But it moved. It moved around.
Remember, the government was giving, I have them upstairs. I got boxes of those damn things still to this day.
Well, and Brett, to Brett's point, even the MyPillow guy was making masks.
Well, then,
jumping on it
because they needed contractors to produce them.
Then you wonder. And we're going down another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Here, but remember, I remember running my business upstairs, and I just sat in my office like, I ain't wearing no freaking mask. Not in my office. I own the building.
Right.
It's my four walls.
Right.
And then people are like, well, they can come in and check.
Wow.
Well, who is they?
Yeah.
Right. They can check. So people can just walk into my building and like, well, where does that fit within the Fourth Amendment?
Yeah.
And this is where you run into this administrative search danger. This is the brown shirt syndrome where, all right, they're not really cops. They're sort of administrative agents and they have the authority, executive authority, by the way, the authority Biden claims he can't use to close down the border, but they have executive authority to come search you for masks or whether you're running your business the right way. And it's like, it never happened.
And meanwhile,
but it was like this philosophical thought that I had.
And meanwhile, it has been conclusively proven through testimony and through FBI's own records that the FBI's out there talking to big tech, trying to suppress all of this discussion about the alternatives.
Yeah.
I mean, and now we find out Amazon, too, is suppressing free speech.
Stalin-esque
It is
stuff.
totally.
Well, and big picture, this is going to happen again in another 80 years.
No question.
Every
It'll
100
before
years.
that. There's already a protocol in place. We've established protocols now.
So we can't learn. I've said this through the whole process. We're not going to learn from this because of information suppressed.
Right.
What good or bad
if you're a conspiracy theorist,
misinformation or disinformation or good information, it doesn't matter. It all has to kind of go in this big pot and boil it up. And what came out of it, we're not going to learn from it.
You have to premise
short-term.
You have to premise that point with the notion that people want to learn from it the truth. They did not want to learn the truth from it. They knew the truth and they suppressed it, or at least they knew that there were counter ideas to what their truth was, and they suppressed those ideas. Yeah. So you have to wonder why they did that. What is the power structure? What is making that? What is fueling that? Yeah. And so, look, the government is smart enough to know the stuff that we know here. When they said bodies were stacking up, they weren't. It's like when they said people were dying, it's like that mask didn't work. They knew that. So why didn't they? It's not that they didn't learn the truth. I think there's an element of the governmental, we'll call it the deep state or the administrative state, that didn't want the truth.
Right.
They wanted it. They had their own incentives.
Right. And I remember what they were setting up the convention center with all these tents for everybody that was going to, the big wave that was going to happen.
Yeah, we're all going to die.
Or get extremely sick, get out, whatever the case might be. And kind of looking back on it kind of now, like it's that, okay, we're going to set up a scenario where worst case doomsday, but it didn't happen. Thank God we were prepared, though. Thank God for the government helping us prepare for that.
Thank God for keeping me away from work.
It has the smell. It has the smell of that. It just does, because we're all kind of going, oh my God, the convention center saved us. It's going to be full of bodies, but it never did. And again, I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad it
ecstatic it didn't.
I'm glad it didn't.
Big Brother saved us,
but,
right?
But I think it turned into Big Brother saved us, though.
No,
so
you're
you
right.
guys remember from Roman history what the origin of the word decimate is. It was, when you're taking over a country or when you're disciplining your troops, that you kill 1 out of every 10 people. In other words, decimate 1 out of every. And that's what they predicted for COVID was 10% loss of the population. They scared the bejesus out of people, saying 1 out of every 10 people
so you look around
are going to die.
You're going to
die from this.
Yeah. Well, and they also turned the conversation. We've probably talked about this before in regards to now the terminology is you died from COVID. You did not die from COVID. No, right. You died from complications brought on by COVID, and it was maybe a heart attack.
You died with COVID in your system. There was a case of a motorcyclist who
died with COVID.
He was decapitated.
Right.
He died from blood loss because his head was separated from his torso.
It's a COVID-related death.
But it was counted as a COVID
which
death.
Which messes with the numbers in regards to the reality of what happened.
We were talking about that down here at the round table, and people were pissed at me. They were pissed. Right. The Exchequer, Jared, we were all down here, and people were furious. You're going to get people killed, and you don't get this vaccine. You're going to kill others.
Right.
Like I went to my doc, and he's like, "So you're going to get the vaccine?" It was a normal checkup, and I was like, "No." And he says, "Well, any questions about it?" No.
Hasn't been tested. Not even on rats.
I didn't even say that though. I just said no questions.
Right.
Anything I can tell you about it? No.
Well, you can tell me that Johnson & Johnson has been relieved of any liability,
right? Well,
in case it backfires.
But listen,
so I guess I don't want to take.
But listen how this finishes, and he goes, "Well, we're just we're encouraging everybody to get it." And I was like, "Yeah, I know," and you don't want it, nope. And then he says it. Well, it only works if everybody gets it.
Hey, here we go.
And I just said, I said, Doc, you could not have told me anything worse if you're trying to get me to take this shot.
Right.
You could not have said anything worse.
Right.
So save that one for somebody else.
Honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm friends. It was my doctor. But I haven't been back.
Well, just a quick note back on the border for a second. So our Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, was impeached by the House by a margin of 1 vote, which is another.
Like, again, a split Republican vote on this. I mean,
no. I mean, it was only 2 or 3 Republicans, but the point is, like Johnson and who is it, the guy in New York. I mean, the Republicans have frittered their margin in the House down.
That's what I mean.
To so few votes that if they lose 2 or 3. They lose. And
the question is
the legislation.
And look, so when people say,
he was
impeached, it doesn't mean anything because the Senate's never going to convict him.
They're not going to convict him.
And so look, but I guess I heard Ben Shapiro talking about this. This isn't my idea, but he's like, the Dems sort of started this path where we have reduced impeachment to a political tool.
Yes.
And guess what? You play stupid games, you get stupid prizes, and that's what's happened here. The Dems started tinkering with this. We're impeaching people for whatever you want, for not high crimes and misdemeanors. So now we get impeachments left and right, and nothing ever happens with it.
He lost his job, though, right?
So no.
I misread that. Then.
No.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Really, what they're pissed about, and what I'm pissed about with Mayorkas is he is a dissembler. He's not telling the truth. This is a policy difference and a constitutional disregard of the administration's, duty. And what Republicans, I think, they never would have impeached this guy if he would have appeared at the hearings and just said, guys, we have a complete policy disagreement with you, right? We are, in fact, encouraging illegal immigration. We are accommodating it. We want to expedite it.
But they're lying about that, right? It's like lies, damn lies.
We won't impeach you. Just tell us the truth about what your policy really is.
Well, then they still might get impeached because that policy violates the law.
Biden.
Yeah, that policy violates the law.
Yeah, he's carrying out what Biden
at least
wants.
Isn't enforcing the law that's in place.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're impeaching the wrong guy, is my point. This is a guy who works for
figurehead getting fired.
He works for Joe Biden. This is Joe Biden's policy,
or somebody's.
Well, It's the administration's policy, and the
speaking of Joe
administration is Joe Biden.
Well, but Joe Biden, I mean, anybody who watched that press conference last week,
Yeah, office rocker.
I mean, and look, it's almost like sad. I mean, if you watch that, so
is.
the federal government or the Department of Justice comes out with a study,
Yeah,
or a report that says, look, we've investigated Joe Biden's handling of classified documents, just like we did Donald Trump's. And yes, it is true that Joe Biden had classified documents, not like the super highly most classified ever, but classified to the extent that Trump's had classified
they were
documents.
about Ukraine.
They had documents that were classified.
Yeah,
And Biden's answers to the questions were, let's just say, not helpful for his defense. Like he told actually a book writer that was helping him write a book, yeah, I got classified documents. They're down in my file cabinet, just like Trump did.
well,
he had
the
them.
big exception. Trump was president and had the right to declassify. Biden was a vice president.
We're talking after he's president.
No. When
Look,
Trump took those documents, he was still president.
When he was asked about him, he wasn't. So, and at any rate, so the idea that Trump could have declassified them before he took them and kept them at
Well, that's what
Mar-a-Lago.
his claim is.
Well, he didn't though. He didn't declassify them.
No, he's well, okay. We're getting into a difference.
This doesn't matter.
Yeah,
So the point is,
I would say he did. You would say he didn't. That's fine.
All right, we'll debate that later.
Yeah. We can.
Biden has no good answers. They find like in a torn up box next to his Corvette or something in his garage, more
Right.
declassified documents after he said they were all safely stored.
Right.
And they say, but this is different. We can't really prosecute this because our opinion is Biden's not competent to stand trial, or words to that effect. So his mental capacity, his memory, his ability to sort of appreciate this leads us to conclude that if we tried to present this to a jury, they would just look at him like some sympathetic, doddering old man who can't remember anything anymore.
Yeah.
Well, look, anybody who looks at this and says, wow, what does that say about his competency to be the president?
Right.
Would have to ask. And this is back to our New Year's predictions.
Yep.
So I wonder, is this the Department of Justice? Is this sort of the deep state saying this is our way to sort of wedge him or push him out of the way and get somebody else to run?
Right.
And maybe so, but apparently Biden went on board with that because he's going to get up there and almost like they baited him to get up and have a press conference like after his bedtime normally.
Yeah.
And profess to the world that he's competent.
Right.
And then he bumbles it like almost like so embarrassingly bumbles it that it's almost incomprehensible what he's saying.
One of the things, the most, I guess, explosive thing that he claimed was that Robert Hur asked him all kinds of questions to mix him up about his son Beau's death. And it has turned out that NBC News, of all outlets, which is a Biden cheerleading organization, NBC News has now confirmed, and independently other news organizations have confirmed through White House leaks that it was Joe Biden himself who brought up the death of his son Beau.
He always does, right? That's like his go. That's his trope.
And if they release the tapes of the interview with President Biden, it will be revealed that Robert Hur did not ask him questions about his son Beau. Biden brought it up.
He brought up. So Biden's defense of that was like, wait a minute. I mean, this attack on Israel just happened. How dare you make?
How
my kid
dare you? Right?
Yeah.
You're asking me about my dead son. How could you do that to a grieving father? He brought it up
in criminal defense. If I'm representing a client, if I were representing Joe Biden, I am duty bound. I would be duty bound to bring to the attention of the court the fact that I think my client may not be competent to stand trial.
Yes.
And that's a duty. It's a professional and ethical obligation.
Right.
And the reason is that we consider it very, very constitutionally, inappropriate is not the right word, a major constitutional problem to prosecute somebody who's not competent.
Yes.
You know, and it's not fair, in other words.
Yes.
It's a due process problem.
Right.
And there's centuries of law on this.
Yes.
So I would bring it to the court's attention. The court would appoint, by statute, a psychologist to conduct an evaluation to determine if my client is fit to stand trial.
Right.
And the standard at that juncture would be, is my client able to understand and comprehend the charges, understand and comprehend the process, and then assist me in the defense? And, you know, you'll send them off and these people get evaluated and I get a report back and I can either agree to the report I can disagree with the report. I can ask for another one. I can hire my own.
Yeah.
And if I were representing Joe Biden, I would absolutely do this. I've represented an elderly gentleman who was accused of some sexual misconduct one time, 20 years ago on a stepdaughter or something, and it was a delayed allegation. And when I met with my client, his wife, then wife, he'd been remarried. She said, "Look, I need you to know, he's at early onset Alzheimer's here.
Yeah.
And he may appear to you that he understands, but he won't." And the case just declined rapidly. Eventually, I had the case dismissed because he declined to a point where he had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
He would go out to buy paint for a project that was 50 years old. It's like he didn't know what was going on. And this isn't a criticism of Biden. It is a fact, I think. I would have him evaluate. So now I would ask, why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to your point, your prediction about filling the void of Biden probably.
Right. This is an easy way to sort of push him away.
I heard last week filling the void will be Michelle Obama.
I've heard that a couple places too. I mean, you got Gavin Newsom, Michelle Obama. Who's the dude we always forget his name from Minnesota?
Yeah, we should write that down so we know. We keep saying
Jesse Ventura.
No.
I
think it's
I'm being a smart aleck.
But I heard that this week and I thought of you. It's like, wow, that's a wild card.
So Biden's going to be in East Palestine, Ohio today. I'm not calling it Palestine.
No.
This is not, this is not, I'm not Igor and you're not Dr. Frankenstein.
Right. Well, so, and the question.
It's East Palestine.
And the question thrown at him, is he going to drink the water? Is he going to drink the water? I'm thinking, really, reporters, that's what you got to ask.
Dean Phillips.
Dean Phillips. Yeah, Dean Phillips. Yeah.
So he's going to do something outrageous in East Palestine. Yeah. But so he's here today. He's here in Ohio today. He's going to, 1 year too late. He's going to go out there and, I don't know, talk about, I'm sure he's going to bring a lot of federal dollars and he's going to sprinkle it around and make some announcements and whatever.
Yeah, it's all nonsense.
It's all nonsense.
It's all political nonsense.
Did he ride the train out here?
Can you imagine, looking at this, and back to our prediction, and I always, look, I hate to ascribe sinister motives to stuff that you can usually explain with incompetence, but I see a motive here. Like DOJ saying it's time to get rid of this guy. So we're going to drop this bombshell report and basically create a path for somebody else to come in. Mm-hmm. And like after the report and his display at this conference or at this press conference, how can anybody say that he is fit to be president?
Yeah,
like how can you?
Timing's pretty good if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's not October.
It's plenty of time for somebody
February.
to sort of step right in. It might be Michelle Obama. It might be Gavin Newsom. It might be Dean Phillips. It might be whoever it is.
Interesting.
It's like now the deep state has chosen the president. That's my conspiracy theory of the day.
Or
chosen the Democratic candidate.
But if that gentleman is not fit to serve, we don't need him in there.
I don't care what party it is.
Who it was. I don't know exactly.
Like this guy's got Alzheimer's or clearly he's got age-related dementia.
He's senile.
Yeah, he's got age-related dementia. I'm not going to say Alzheimer's.
We were worried about Reagan the last couple of years.
As we should have been.
Well,
the media required Trump to take a mental competency.
Remember this, and Trump did.
And he did. Right?
No, they didn't require it. They baited him to do it. Yeah. They dared him to do it.
Exactly right. I'm saying the media, in their way, compelled it. And Trump did it, and he passed it. And Biden
even
do
Biden
this.
4 years ago was a totally different guy. I mean, totally different.
Totally different. You just look at him.
Well, serving in that office takes its toll.
Irrespective of how old you are.
It doesn't matter. If you were 25 years old, you're going to walk out a 29-year-old, 50-year-old.
Yeah, look at everybody before and after, all the pictures. They're so obvious.
Oh, my gosh.
So the Georgia case against Trump, speaking of
Take
Trump.
a load off Fanny.
Right.
We should publish that again.
Take a load on Fanny. Take a load for free. Put the load on Fanny and take the load right off me. That could be Nathan Wade's testimony.
Yeah.
Because what Fani is claiming is when they went on these lover vacations, that Nathan Wade, the prosecutor she appointed to go after Trump.
To the tune of how much money?
So far, he's been paid $750,000. All
right, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good side
And he's
contract.
an ambulance chasing lawyer.
He's not a prosecutor.
No.
Right.
So The question in this before the judge to decide whether or not to throw this guy off the case was, well, Mr. Wade, there are receipts in real time when you were on vacation off your credit card that you paid for this, you paid for that, you paid for the other thing, and so Fani, who is with you, is deriving a direct benefit of enriching you so that she can go on vacation. Like, that's just one thing. And Fani's defense to this is, oh, I reimbursed him with cash. So actually, he didn't pay anything.
Her real defense, Norm, is racism.
Oh, well.
How dare you accuse a black woman trying to do her job and survive in this world of such corruption?
So I'll try an imitation.
Literally, that was her speech.
I'm not going to emasculate a black man. Oh, come on. Hey, listen, I'm so far past all of this. She is a very well compensated
corruption
prosecutor.
Is colorblind.
Exactly right. She's making a ton of money in one of the richest and largest counties in the United States.
I don't care.
And she's playing the race card.
I don't care if she's been discriminated against. I mean, I care, but I don't care for this person. If she's been discriminated against, if she suffered racism, all of it. But it's not a defense to this. These accusations, like, you can't do what she has accused of doing.
No.
If it's true, irrespective of what color your skin is, you cannot do it.
Well, and to play the cash game is the old mobster defense. I mean, that's the classic thing you say to the IRS.
I'm not allowed to buy a Coke for a politician in a round of golf.
Exactly right.
I can't.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's like you can't even do that.
But she is claiming she went on these elaborate vacations, and in real time, she didn't take money out of her bank in cash. So she has no receipts or anything, but yet she is saying, because my daddy told me to have 6 months worth of cash sitting around the house, she is saying, oh, actually, Nathan didn't pay for those vacations, so I derived no benefit by hiring him. I reimbursed him dollar for dollar.
Even short of that,
bullshit.
The fact that she hires her love interest is corrupt enough.
Well, of course. Right.
So, but now if she's got a benefit from it, and I've talked to friends of mine who have golfed with people in Congress, either state or federal levels, and you know what? The honest ones won't even let you buy them a sandwich
because it's reportable,
and it's not.
You have to report that.
It's not just that here's what I think. More to the point, though, Norm. It's not that I won't let you buy me a sandwich. It's that I have to buy it myself because I don't want there to be any question. I'm not going to let you buy it and then give you cash.
No doubt.
They are careful enough to say, I'm going to document every single penny of this because they know.
So I was a lobbyist.
Because the anal probe hurts.
I was a lobbyist.
Yeah, no.
I had to fill out those forms. The forms go to the Ohio Inspector General's office, and you sign them and you notarize them, and it is a form of assertion that has penalties, under the law.
I can't send poinsettias to the courthouse. That kind of stuff used to happen at Christmas time. We'd send poinsettias over. You send Christmas cards. You send cookies and M&Ms or whatever. And I can't even bake cookies and deliver them to courthouses where the judges and the staff works, even as a thank you, legitimately, not looking for anything in return.
Of course not.
Because the Ohio Ethics Commission is going to crawl up your backside and charge you with ethics violations, and those are crimes.
Right.
Yeah.
So another big story, and then I definitely want to get to some criminal stuff, Steve, that I need you to comment about, please. But I can't let this go. This is probably the biggest story that broke this week. Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, who are two, liberal journalists, but very careful journalists. They have revealed that it was the CIA that initiated the first moves on the chessboard for Russiagate, for the idea that Trump and Putin were in collusion somehow. And the way they did that, according to their reporting, is the CIA would do something called bumping. Bumping is when you have somebody from a foreign country inadvertently meet with a target. And so, for example, if you have sitting at the bar, if you have a guy talking to somebody from the Australian embassy, and the person from the Australian embassy is in on it, which is what Taibbi and Schellenberger claim, in regards to Papadopoulos, George Papadopoulos, one of Trump's advisors. They're sitting at a bar. This guy brings up out of nowhere, oh, hey, supposedly Trump, rented a room in Moscow and hired prostitutes, right? So the CIA documents that Papadopoulos has been bumped. Then they waddled down the street to the FBI and they say, okay, you guys are in charge of internal investigation. We have 26 Trump targets that were bumped by external foreign agents or foreign people. So FBI, here, you take it over. And this whole thing was orchestrated as a campaign within the CIA, according to these two journalists. And guess what? The files at Langley, which were there, have now disappeared.
Imagine that. So you have to ask why.
Right.
Why would the CIA, what was the impetus to do this?
The swamp. That's
no,
the
I mean, I'm asking somewhat rhetorically. It's
right.
like, the answer, there's no answer to that.
And this was when Obama was president. So this is...
Well, remember, Trump went after Obama on the birther scandal and all that other nonsense.
Yeah, right.
So there was no love lost early on. And there's this
but Trump
event.
didn't do any of that when he was president.
No, correct. But there was this event where Obama was sort of insulted Trump and it's like... and made this speech, and Trump was in the audience. He's like, well, I just encourage him to run for president. I'm worried about these other things.
For the record, on the birth certificate, the handwritten birth certificate has never been produced.
Right. It was always fishy.
It was a computerized reduction of the birth certificate that Obama released.
Yeah. I mean, look,
just saying.
It became this little back and forth game between Trump and Obama. Right. Obama thought he got the last word when he said, I'm worried about other things and running the country instead of worried about my birth certificate. So I laid that to rest. You want to run for president, get the votes. And then Trump beat him. And that pissed everybody off.
Well, Obama had,
beat them, I say.
Obama was giving speeches during Russiagate about how you could not use the organs of government like the CIA and the FBI to go after your political enemies.
After he did the same thing for 4 years.
Turns out, right?
Yeah. Anybody just go research the Gibson Guitar Factory.
Yeah, exactly.
I will bump everybody.
Well, we did the show on. We did that.
Go research.
That's right.
That's right. There's my bump. Anyway.
Yeah.
So we got some criminal cases.
Yeah. So this I should say legal cases. This defamation case with E. Jean Carroll, the author for Playboy and Elle, who claimed that when she was in her 50s, she cannot name the year, and this is her testimony. So I'm not making any of this up. During the testimony about this alleged sexual predation by Trump at the Bergdorf Goodman department store in New York City, she said because of this incident with Trump where he attempted to rape her in a dressing room, she says that she lost all interest in sex from that moment on for the rest of her life. And yet she can't remember even the year it happened. Right. She said 1993, 1995, 1996-ish. And then there's emails between her and girlfriends. One email says, and I quote directly, this is from her, as soon as we're well enough to scheme, we must do our patriotic duty. And then there's the Law and Order show, which she has watched, where a character talks about raping a woman in a dressing room as a woman tries on lingerie, which is the exact fact pattern that E. Jean Carroll claims. So long story short, the original trial finds that Trump has to pay her $2 million. He wasn't charged criminally. $2 million, though, civilly for sex abuse and $3 million for defamation. He continues to deny her claims, calls her a nut. She sues him a second time for defamation once again, and the jury gives her $83 million. Mm-hmm. And what I am saying as a common man, exercising common sense.
Look, this is all in New York, too, by the way.
So if I'm Brett Kavanaugh or I'm Donald Trump, and I am legitimately, just for sake of argument, not guilty of what these women have claimed.
Well, you're denying the conduct.
Why can't I talk about? Why can't I say she's a nut?
Look, this
I
is
don't
going to
know
be a
this
free.
woman.
Look, this
You've
is
got to be kidding me.
defamation of character and the slander and these kind of torts. And by torts, I mean I am suing you for things you said about me.
Yes,
those types of torts, causes of action, always conflict with the First Amendment. It doesn't mean one trumps the other, no pun intended, but that's the analysis.
Yes.
I have a right of free speech to say what I want. You have a right not to be defamed. And the law has to sort of sort that out.
Yeah.
And one of the things that everybody has probably heard is truth is a defense. So if what you say is true, that's a defense. It also matters if you're a public figure or not. Public figures are given less protection by the law because you've put yourself out there as a public figure. And
the damage can be much more because of what you say.
Well, you get less protection as a public figure because you have intentionally put yourself out there as a public figure.
Right. But what you say could hurt more because you're a public figure, so you have less protection.
Correct.
Right. I guess I think
what they're saying is you have sort of given up some of your right of privacy because you've chosen to make yourself a public figure.
Right.
That might be the policy.
Yeah.
And then you have the other side of the coin where in my private business, so if Norm, you slander me in my business, well, that I get more protection there if it's not true. So it's like that becomes, I don't even have to prove your intent.
Right.
It just is.
Right.
So I always, this is why anybody who has ever, if you're an employer and you've asked for a reference from another employer and you get an answer like, yes, that person worked here between January and February of whatever dates. Yeah, but can you tell me about this person's performance? All I can tell you is that person worked here between January and February of whatever dates because they don't want to say anything bad.
Yeah.
And because they're worried about slander and these other things. So, look, how does this sort out? It looks to me like Trump is targeted in New York, and this is obviously a Homer jurisdiction against Trump. You can do whatever you want in New York, and Trump will lose. And they're trying to bankrupt him. And I don't know what the Court of Appeals in New York will do. These aren't really, I don't know if this will filter all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court or not on some of these First Amendment issues. I'm not familiar with the litigation. But it will be interesting to watch because if this can happen to Trump, it can happen to anybody.
It's literally a he said, she said situation.
Now, Trump has never done himself any favors with his comments, with his Twitter feed, with his he's never done himself any favors.
Right.
True.
If you call Trump a dummy, he comes over the top and it will. I've always said he's the guy we all knew the guy.
But there's nothing
else. If you get in a fight and you go in your car and you get a tire iron, he's going to go get a big chain. And if you get your chain, he's going to get a gun. You get a gun, he's going to get a bazooka. Trump always comes back
all
over
I can
the top.
say, Steve, is I've never raped anybody. And if a woman came out of nowhere that I either knew beforehand or had just met or maybe never met, and she said she takes me to court, right? Mm-hmm. Charges me with sex, some kind of sexual predator kind of thing, civilly, okay? And then I get on TV, right, and I deny everything, and I'm outraged by it, and I call her a nut, right? Mm-hmm. Why shouldn't I be allowed to do that?
I think you should be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you should be. I think you should be allowed to do that whether you did it or not. Look, and then you have to look. So then, take this to a different realm.
I don't care that Trump pisses people off. He is allowed to defend himself in the public square.
Well, what I'm saying is he is permitted to piss people off.
Absolutely.
But
so what?
That invites conflict. And this is and that matters. So we've got two questions. What does the law prevent and what does the law permit?
Right.
And then how should we behave and conduct ourselves to avoid these kind of problems?
Right.
So I would never blame a woman for being date raped. But there is a world where you can avoid putting yourself in at-risk situation. So I'm not going to walk down the street holding a stack of money in the middle of the night in the middle of the city and then complain that I'm a victim of crime. I'm just not going to do those things.
Right.
So look, Trump is putting himself out there in a way that he is inviting, or he's pissing people off on purpose and inviting a counterattack. I'm not saying that he's wrong in the law, but I'm saying he's not doing himself any favors.
Well,
he's inviting attack.
He didn't do anything that she is calling defamation until after she sued him.
Well, sure. So look, if I'm representing Donald Trump in that scenario, and he probably wouldn't have listened to me, but I would say, keep your damn mouth shut.
Well,
you got to go win this case.
Well, sure you would.
Right.
Sure you would.
Otherwise, you're going to invite more.
Right.
Yeah. And her case was based on she's lost employment because of the defamation. Is that correct?
Well,
I think she's saying that she's. Yeah, I don't know what.
Yes.
If there's such an award,
the short answer to
right?
Brett's question is yes.
Didn't she say that?
That is one of her claims.
But defamation. It's like a lot of these things also require specific intent. Like
so
Trump
she
intended to do it.
Right.
She published a book. It's a man-hate book. She published a book in 2019 called, and the title of the book is "What Do We Need Men For?" And then she wrote in that book about this alleged encounter with Trump at the department store. The book comes out. Trump says she's a kook. She's a nut. I don't know this woman. I may have met her once or twice, with one of, out on the town at a cocktail party. But I don't know. I don't know her. We had no relationship, and this event didn't happen. Then she sued him. And if somebody did that to me, and I felt like saying she's a nut and I don't know her, I'd say it too.
Think how helpless, though, you become when the standards of justice bend against you unfairly.
Well, what did the New York legislature do to help her with this case? They passed a law that for 1 year period would open up to people who were beyond the statute of limitations.
To permit it. Right.
To permit just during this window. And she filed her case on day one when the window opened.
Right. So think how this happens. Think what this does and it's sort of like back to my impeachment argument. It's like, be careful because eventually the devil turns back on you. It's like if one side's going to do it, the other side's going to do it. Right. If there is no standard, this is like when people create their own version of truth. So I have my truth, you have your truth. When there is no baseline, when there is no standard, then there is no fairness. So because we have to be able to build our justice system on some bedrock.
So let me ask you about a possible when this goes up on appeal. What about double jeopardy? The idea that there's a statute of limitations, it had run. She couldn't sue. Well, the legislature
it's not double jeopardy because double jeopardy is criminal in nature.
So you don't think
there might be other problems there. So I'd have to give this some deeper thought. But
what about ex post facto?
It might be an ex post facto law, but they changed the law. It might be an ex post facto law, but again, I don't.
Just for him.
I'd have to research whether that requires government action in a criminal setting. So this is a private action. So if you're going to really dig into this, you're going to have to dig into the general or the legislative notes, the history, everything, and try to. And look, Trump's got lawyers, I'm sure, who are doing this. So if they created a law that only permitted her to sue him, and that was the sole purpose of it, now you might arguably have some government action.
Okay,
I don't know.
But that would be good grist for an appeal, you think? Maybe. Pretty good. I mean, the idea that they carved out.
It's one of the issues, right? Is there actually a legal cause of action?
Where's the equal protection? All other.
Might be an equal protection problem.
Yeah.
Might be a due process problem.
Okay.
That's one of his issues. The other issues are going to be truth as a defense or this didn't, whatever. Right?
I know. I'm throwing this at you.
Then you've got the amount of damages are astronomically disproportionate to what's alleged. It's just
kind of a big bill, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. 83.
And again, where does this number come from? I don't.
It's just like we want to bankrupt the guy.
It's to that extreme, isn't it? Yeah.
The jury deliberated for 2 hours.
And as a bigger picture problem, all of this is backfiring because the more of this crap, I've always said this. You take a bully, and then you can beat the bully down so far, but eventually he becomes the victim.
Yeah, right.
Eventually he becomes the victim.
They've done that.
And now this is sort of creating a groundswell of support for Trump. Like, hold on a second, guys. This isn't fair. You can't go after the guy, but do it within the bounds of normal fairness and law.
It is election interference.
And it starts to feel that way.
That's right.
Yeah,
it
starts to feel that way. True or not, it starts to feel that way.
Let me bring this other case. Now, this came out of California. Now, this is criminal, not civil like the Jean Carroll trial. This young lady, I think she's like 28, 26, something like that. She's in her 20s. Her name is Bryn Spejcher, or if I may not be pronouncing it right.
Bryn Spejcher.
Bryn Spejcher. And she got high with her boyfriend. And pot today is way more potent than it used to be. So, I guess I can understand how you could get blown out of your mind smoking pot. And she lost her shit and stabbed her boyfriend 108 times, killed him, of course. Somebody called the cops. When the cops showed up, they literally had to take the knife out of her hands because she was starting to cut herself Anyway, she was found guilty. She was convicted of involuntary homicide. Is the specific California description. She got no jail time, 100 hours of community service, and 2 years on probation. And the judge who decided what the sentence would be explained that the reason she got no jail time was because she had diminished capacity and was not responsible for.
Well, look, this is as old as the hills, temporary insanity, and there used to be a defense called voluntary intoxication. Generally speaking, that you got so wasted you couldn't form the mental mens rea element. So I guess we'll look at it this way: traditional crime in the Western sort of common law tradition is you have to have two things. You have to have an act called the actus reus, which means the thing, and then you had to have the mental element, or what's called the mens rea. So you have to have some degree of intent. Now, the level of intent changes depending on the crime. So you have to have less intent for something like, no intent for something like speeding. That just requires zero intent. It doesn't matter if you meant to do it or not. And then to commit a purposeful crime like murder, you have to have specific intent. I intend to kill you. And then going up and down the line, you have things like negligence, you have recklessness, you have knowingly, and then you have purposely. What they're looking at is an external factor. Here, her mental status at the time of the crime had diminished her ability to establish the mens rea element or the intent element to commit the crime. Now, that can manifest itself in a couple of different ways in the criminal justice system. So look at it, it's like a sliding scale. Like on the most extreme side for the defense, you could say that's an absolute defense for the crime. So in our situation, everybody's heard of temporary insanity, taking away the intoxication part for a second. And then you could slide it all the way to the other side where it's no defense to the crime. And that just depends on what the legislative branch says. That's the first curve. The other one is, how does the system treat it? Because the prosecutors have discretion, judges have discretion, prosecutors have discretion in what they're going to charge. And, you could say, even though we could prove a purposeful murder here because the law would let us, we're not going to pursue that because there's some mitigating circumstances. While they may not be a defense, we're going to take that into consideration as we decide what to charge this person with. And then you get it all the way to the judge, who takes similar factors into consideration when imposing the sentence. So I don't know the facts here, and I don't know the California law here. But, this is a situation where there was obvious mitigation. She had lost her mind for whatever period of time, committed horrible crimes. It's a hard decision to decide what to do with that person, right? So it's like everybody knows. Like, here's the example I use when I talk to juries. Everybody knows as a kid, and we all said this, when you go tell on your brother or your sister or your best friend, everybody's heard a kid, you did that on purpose. You hit me and you did it on purpose. And that matters, right? If you did it on purpose, that matters.
Yeah.
If you did it by mistake, it's different. If it's something else, it's different. So I can't say anything good or bad about this. I don't know. And then the other thing you got to consider is, what's her history? Has she ever done anything wrong? Has she lived a good life? And maybe the other factor, it's very relevant these days, is what does the victim's family say? Because now our Constitution here in Ohio, and I'm sure California, they have amendments or laws that talk about victims' rights. So then on the one hand, you could have the victim's family coming in and saying, not only do I want this person dead, I want him tortured before he dies. And then on the other side, they could say, look, you hear this in like vehicular homicide cases where a best friend kills another in a car. Mm-hmm. Like, we're praying for him. We don't blame him. We don't want anything to happen to this guy. We know it was a mistake. And the swing there would be like 10 years or no years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and so how much I would want to know a few things. What was the evidence that she was completely impaired and out of her mind? And how strong was that? How is it that she consumed the drug? Did she even know that was the drug laced with something that she didn't know? So you can maybe take away some of the initial intent to get high. What did the victim's family want out of this? What was her history, her character? How she lived her life? And what is the risk that she's going to do it again? What's the risk of recidivism? And then of course you've got punishment. How much do we need to punish somebody? So I can't say anything good or bad about it. It just is one of those cases that is interesting.
So Steve, if this happened in Ohio, and let's substitute alcohol for the marijuana. And now that marijuana is recreational in Ohio, I get that, but and we probably will see a version of this in Ohio.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But In Ohio. Okay. So a husband gets himself all pissed up, drinking whiskey, and he beats up his wife and she dies. I mean, you can't just get off because you're drunk, right? I mean,
Well, you can mitigate it, perhaps.
You can mitigate
it. Can maybe be mitigated. I mean, I've had a case where somebody was completely blotto, and there's still some semblance of a voluntary intoxication defense. And my client didn't walk away, but it helped me resolve the case for less of a punishment. But in your scenario, I mean, in this scenario, the one you're talking about in California,
no jail
I am
time.
presuming
That's what's killing me.
I am presuming that there was no passion behind the crime. In other words, there wasn't a fight that made any sense.
Okay.
So if I flip out and I see you as the Antichrist attacking me and I kill you, all right, and say that's without drugs, I just happen to be insane. That would be the defense of insanity. I plead insanity, or maybe even temporary insanity. Now, if you and I hate each other and I get drunk and pissed off and beat you to death, well, that's a whole different animus, right? That's a whole different mens rea.
Yeah. Okay.
So you need to know facts.
Okay. Yeah. And one little detail in that case that I didn't write down, but I do remember it now that you brought that up. It was the state's own expert witness, a psychiatrist or psychologist, I don't know which, but their expert witness said that she had no capacity to decide right from wrong.
Yeah, so classic insanity test is you don't know right from wrong and you can't understand the nature and consequences of your actions.
Because she was so high, she was in another world.
Monotone test is for those lawyers out there.
So I guess that testimony coming from the prosecution's own witness.
Now, of interest,
probably,
the old Jimmy Stewart movie with George C. Scott, Anatomy of a Murder.
Okay.
They talk about this insanity test. It's a temporary insanity case. The guy flips out because his wife is talking to some other guy at a bar or something. Jimmy Stewart, the old sort of salt of the earth fisherman, comes along and defends it, and he talks about the monotone test. And there used to be two different insanity tests. One was called an irresistible impulse, and the other is you don't understand the nature and consequences of your actions. And I think most states or most jurisdictions sort of have combined some version of that. So it's like the irresistible impulse is almost gone. So like that would be like, I just couldn't control myself, so I beat you to death. Like that doesn't quite make you insane anymore. So it's all been standardized, and there are experts and psychologists who do these evaluations. They even have standard psychological testing to help, like tools they use to sort of, you put in data and you spit out a result. So they can talk about it.
I wanted to going off on another route. Sure. There's been new words added to dictionary.com.
Oh, okay.
And as we know, new words added to dictionary usually reflect where we've been, where we're going. We're absorbing different things going on. So I think it's like 300 words, but I picked out a few that I thought were interesting and actually lead to reflect a couple of things we talked about. So some new words in the dictionary.com is girl dinner. An often attractively presented collection of snacks that involve little preparation, such as small quantities of cold cuts, cheese, fruit, cherry, tomatoes, deemed sufficient to constitute a meal for one. Okay.
That's a girl dinner.
Girl dinner.
Girl dinner. Okay. The next one, range anxiety. The apprehension or fear that an electric vehicle's battery will run out of power before reaching one's intended destination or a charging station. It's for real. Okay?
God, that's beautiful.
Love this one. So I'm going to read. This is a noun. This is the definition. The gradual degradation of an online platform or service's functionality as part of a cycle in which the platform or service first offers benefits to users to attract them, then pursues more and more profits at the expense of others, of the users. So basically an app going away, okay? But they're trying to pull more money. That is called enshedification. Bed rotting, the practice of spending many hours in bed during the day, often with snacks or an electronic device as a voluntary retreat from activity or stress.
Yeah.
Apparently, though, this is the verb form is bed rot. Despite the negative connotation of rotting, many use the term in a positive way to refer to what they consider a form of self-care.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so Barbie core. An aesthetic or style featuring playful pink outfits, accessories, decor, of course, from Barbie, the movie and such. Squish, an intense feeling of infatuation that is not romantic or sexual in nature, a platonic crush. Now get this. This term is also used in an entirely unrelated way in the context of U.S. politics as a derogatory term for a politician, especially a Republican, who is perceived by members of their own party as overly moderate or willing to compromise.
Wow.
Okay. Keto flu is a temporary feeling of illness or physical unease, often experienced by those starting a ketogenic diet, also called a carb flu. Intimate partner violence, acts of violence or abuse within a romantic relationship.
All right.
So there's a term for it, which I guess makes. And lastly, I had, so this word, Boobne, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Boobne? I don't know.
Boobne.
It's a noun. Pimples or a rash in the area of the breasts or on the upper back caused by a bra that shaves not clean or is made of material that is allergenic or not breathable.
So like a combination of acne and boob.
Boobne. Yeah.
Wow.
Boobne. I got you. Well, look, I propose that we have a word of the day, a new word of the day going forward every week. Or a new word of the week going forward. So, well, look, we've been at it a long time. It's probably time to wrap it up.
I think in shitification.
Oh my God!
I mean, I'll be using that.
I'm kind of liking it.
It's good stuff.
These words. Oh my God!
Let this program never inshitify. Okay.
Indeed. All right. Well, another riveting session of Common Sense right here at the Roundtable at Channel 511. If you want your own podcast, by the way, you can go to channel511.com and there's a little calendar you can click on. You can sign up for your spot and you can come down here and record right where we are, right where Norm sits. If you want to avoid Norm's spot, Brett's, if you don't like any of us or either of those two, you can sit in mine.
Void us out.
Or we'll find a different spot for you, but we can get you recorded, sounded professionally, and get you up in the podcast airwaves with your own show. We are here brought to you, of course, by Harper Plus Accounting. It is that time. It's not too late to call them for your tax needs this season, but you better act quickly because tax season has descended upon those in the accounting world. So we are coming at you time and time again, week in and week out, right from the middle, at least until now.